Question was, you know, this kind of sign. council requires PDF. This was in, no, when we first sent out 2-3 years ago. My fear is the council sitting there, all of a sudden they publish a meeting that needs to be posted. Okay, because I had looked last night and I didn't see it.
Yeah, we don't have any HR system. We post it to the calendar company.
Okay, okay. All right, so this is just hanging in the camera. Okay, the full one. No, we read it. Good. Very confusing, I guess. Is this one? One. Oh, this one. Katie's not at correct. All right, you got it.
No problem, no problem. Doing okay. Looking forward, we're making progress on this project. I know. That I do know. Good morning, Ken. How you doing?
Very well. How about you?
Good. Can I let everybody in? No waiting room? Okay. Has Catherine joined yet?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, you are. Yeah.
And will they have a better picture than that?
Yeah.
So I'll see.
We're still getting people in from the lobby coming into the call.
All right.
And so then she asked Catherine, will hopefully share a screen and she'll stop there. For those on the sidelines, you're welcome to take a chair at the table if it'll help you hear and participate better, okay? So you're welcome to come on to the tables. Or you can skulk in the background, one of the two. Give us another minute or so as people are still coming in on the call. Catherine, can you hear me? Is she muted?
Yes, I can.
Go again, Catherine.
I can hear you. And you can hear me?
You can. You got a little bit of an echo.
Yeah, try again.
Okay, we're, go one more time, Catherine. I'm trying to make sure the echo's gone. Can you hear us, Catherine?
Yes, I can hear you.
Sign in, please.
You good?
Is my volume down? Okay. Okay, so we're about a minute or so after 10. I'm going to do a roll call of my steering committee members to make sure I have a quorum, because this is an official meeting of the steering committee for the Railroad and Harbor
Ian McDonald.
Okay. Please speak into the mic. Hang on. Apparently we're still having some sound issues, so there we go.
Ian McDonald.
Ken Buda, Town Council.
Okay. From those who called in from the steering committee, if you would go ahead and identify yourselves. I got somebody from Royal Farms. I can't see who's there from Royal Farms then, Jack. Okay, so we got representation from Royal Farms, which is Mr. Kemp. Do I have Air Baldwin on the line? I can't see.
Tara's in there, Steve Bennett's in there.
Okay, so again, we got Steve Bennett, you there? Yeah, Steve's there. Tara Ashworth, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Barely.
Something's not separated. Anyway. We're still gonna work on the sound issues. Who else have I missed from mine is, Harbor. Is Stuart there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yay, Stuart's there. Ben, Lewis, are you there? I believe I now have a quorum. Do I have any, Jim Gunn or any representation from Jim Gunn's company? Okay. If they continue to join, that's fine. We have lots of members of the public that are present as well, both in the room and on the call itself. So Catherine, I'm going to turn the reins over to you.
All right, thanks, Katie. And you all can hear me?
Yes.
Yes. I know folks online can hear me. Okay. I'm gonna share my screen. I'll jump in. Okay, are you all seeing my screen, my slideshow? Yes.
We're going to keep working on the echoing issue if you guys will just bear with
All
us,
right,
but we're
well,
going to
this
keep
is
going.
the second of 4 scheduled meetings of the steering committee for the Railyard and Harbor Area Master Plan in Cape Charles. We had our kickoff meeting in January where we discussed vision and priorities and at a high level. And today we're going to be diving into site analysis and initial findings in more detail. To that end, we are joined today by our economic development and design and engineering teams, who I hope will be doing most of the presenting today. You all have met the Berkeley Group team, myself, Brooke, and Steph Mathena. We're, of course, your project management, planning, and facilitation team. But we're joined by David Denny, who's an economic development professional with Rural Resilience Advisors, Chuck Rapp, a landscape architect and planner with Collins Engineering, and Kevin Schaefer, who's an architect with Design Develop. So these are our technical team, and like I said, they're going to be doing most of the presenting. We'll look at economic development, we'll look at some of the site analysis, and then we'll also take a deep dive into the framework plan that we've put together for the site. Our meeting objectives today are, again, to briefly review project schedule and the results of phase 1 stakeholder input. And the packet of materials that the steering committee received, you all should have received a pretty thorough summary of public engagement. We won't be going through that line by line, but if you all have any specific questions, happy to answer them. We're really going to be spending most of our time today on these last 2 items. So we'll be reviewing the guiding principles derived from public engagement and data analysis. David's going to present progress on the economic analysis. Chuck is going to present existing conditions and site analysis, and then Kevin's going to present the draft framework plan. And this framework plan is this is the key, the focus of the meeting today. This was derived from site analysis, from economic data, from the public engagement results. And our hope is that the presentation of the framework will really be a discussion aimed at refining that plan so that we can move into phase 2 of plan development.
Thank you.
I'll pause there before we move on to schedule. Any questions about materials that were received or our objectives for the meeting today?
Nope, we're good.
We will forge ahead. All right, project schedule and stakeholder input. We are right here at the end of phase 1 with steering committee 2. Phase 1 has focused on, again, data gathering, site analysis, and stakeholder input. The key deliverables from this phase are the existing conditions summary that the steering committee should have received, stakeholder input, so you should have, again, received the public engagement summary. And those documents included an analysis of opportunities and constraints for the site, the identification of 5 guiding principles to guide master plan development, and then we'll look together today at the draft framework plan. Again, our goal is to get feedback on that plan so that we can move into phase 2. Phase 2 includes the development of some specific concepts and design elements to plug into that framework. We have 2 in-person public engagement events, as well as an accompanying online survey that are part of phase 2. Those events are scheduled to take place April 24th and 25th. Is that correct, Katie?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So I believe those are to correspond with the blessing of the fleet as well as the love race. They'll be similar to the events that we had in January, but more open house style, where folks can come, look at materials, leave feedback on posters kind of at their convenience, so there won't be necessarily a formal sit-down presentation. The exact content of those open houses is to be determined, but we'll likely have folks responding to the draft framework plan, reacting to precedent images for design elements, those sorts of activities. We'll also have a 3rd steering committee meeting that is scheduled for May 12th, 10 a.m., also held virtually like this meeting. And the tentative plan for that meeting is to look at the results of public engagement for phase 2, and then begin to refine the draft concept plan, as well as potentially taking a look at some initial implementation strategies. The phase 3 events are not yet scheduled, but that phase will focus on getting feedback on the fully drafted plan, so both the concept plan, strategies, and implementation. Katie, do you want to take a moment to talk about the design competition?
I do.
Okay.
Am I on, Jack? Hang on. Okay. For those who may not have followed along recently, we've had an offer come forward from a part-time resident, Jim Clark. He lives up in Bay Creek North. He's an architect, and he has had extensive experience, and I do mean over 20 years experience of running design competitions. And he came forward with an offer to bring his services to us free of charge to parallel a design competition with this process. And it would be, the design competition would be based with its parameters on these founding principles of what we're looking at for this property. So what comes out of the work of this steering committee will serve the basis of how we solicit out as a design competition narrative and ask architectural students from not just in Virginia, Maryland, across the globe. We're going to extend this as wide as we can cast a net to make people aware of the town of Cape Charles, of the uniqueness of this project and this property as a whole, and ask them to help us start to give some visual reflection as to what our guiding principles could look like through a design process. And so that's going to delay a little bit of the phase 3 to allow the start of that design competition to happen. We're going to release that in May. And I'm working on that right now with Mr. Clark and finalizing that process of notification out to the world at large, setting up a website and the other elements associated with that, process of how to submit their application and their design considerations, and the review process. There will be a juried body that would look at all the design submissions. That juried body will be composed of representation from the town, The Berkeley group will be involved with that. Mr. Clark will be involved with that as well. And we are looking to add a couple more names to that group who kind of know what they're doing, because I'm not going to say I know what I'm doing relative to looking at design plans from an architectural standpoint. But we're really excited by this. They presented this to the town council. Some of the projects that they've been involved with, that was also presented, and we put all that up on our website, so you can go look at that as well. His most recent involvement was dealing with a design competition for the Washington Monument in DC. And so again, it doesn't necessarily mean that any of the designs that came forward get actually selected and constructed, but it helps start putting some thought process into our community as to what things could look like, as well as to potential developers of that property, whoever may eventually own the land and develop it. So we're really excited by this pairing of a design competition with what the Berkeley group is doing for us. We're excited for the exposure it's going to bring to the town as well. And ultimately, when we go through and do the award sections of the design winners, we hope to pair it, if my boss says yes to it, with a fall festival that really, sorry, that really celebrates the town as a whole. And so we do have a large idea of how we would launch this and demonstrate it to the public at large and be able to view these concepts coming forward. We're really excited. And I'll throw one more plug, because you may be looking at me like, this is crazy, who would do a design competition? Probably the most famous design competition resulted in something actual real in the United States, and it was the design of the Vietnam War Memorial. That was done through a design competition process that actually came to fruition, and the National Park Service chose to construct that and have that project move forward. So again, I don't think there's anybody who can't provide some value and look at things differently. I know some of the criticism may come of, we as the town should be deciding this. We will be. It is the town citizens, the town visitors here, the town employees who will be part of reviewing this ultimate product and deciding, did we like it? Should we award that to be a winner to this design competition? So the value is we get to see outside perspective. It's nice to kind of see how other people look at things, and I'm not going to say that I know how to look at everything correctly for my town. I hopefully bring my own vision and viewpoint of what would work in the town of Cape Charles, but I also recognize hearing from others outside is useful too, because that's where you get experience as you learn from others. So we're really excited by this, and I hope I've captured it all. If you have any questions, I'm going to open the floor for a minute. Any questions? Anybody want to hear anything further on the design competition that's now been added to this project?
I have one question. When does the design competition begin, and when does it end?
We're going to release it, as I said, in May of this year. And with that, it's going to be in 2 phases. So again, the first phase will be the initial submission of the concepts. That probably run over the summer for that to go out to all the architectural schools and to the world at large for that notification, with a return date that will be sometime in August or September. We're still working on that calendar. I should have that finalized here in another week. And then from there, we'll move to the phases 2 and 3, which would allow for a more expanded submission from the semifinalist round and things of that nature. As I said, our goal is hopefully to get to the final semifinalist and now finalist selection. That would align with a fall festival. It probably will happen in fall of 2027. That doesn't mean that the master plan will stop until we can do that final piece of the design competition. The master plan will actually conclude, because all of the design competition is really just trying to visually reflect the principles of the master planning process. So I hope that helps answer some of it. We're still fleshing out some of the particulars of the calendar as we're talking with the architectural schools to make sure that we're doing something that works within their calendars as well with their students. So, any other questions on this?
It doesn't have to be only students.
No, it does not have to be only students.
Repeat.
Yeah, sure.
I was just wondering if it was just going to be open to students for the design
No,
competition.
It is wide open. So, yes.
Have you thought even further, are you gonna do the fall festival maybe every year? And, oh, I'm loud enough, honey, I don't need
The viewing audience needs the sound system.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I was just thinking further, like, might this be a festival you would do every year? And would you also consider merchandising? A lot of town festivals do like T-shirts to help promote it.
That's beyond the scope of what I'm charged to do with the planning process for this harbor and railroad project, but the town manager's sitting right here, so I'm sure he's going to take those comments back forward to the council and see what they would do. This is making this an annual event if a festival should be successful, so. Any comments from those online? Hearing none. Catherine, you're back up. Oh, no, is there somebody?
All right. Great, thank you, Katie.
Okay.
I think was there a question?
So there's a question in chat. What is the function of the design competition if the town doesn't own the land?
Again, this is just really meant to provide some creativity, to receive some outside perspective based upon what we are all familiar with, but may not necessarily see some of the vision that somebody from the outside could bring us. It doesn't mean it has to be constructed. It would be, again, part of the documents of our planning process and shared with anybody who would step forward to purchase the Canoni property, the railroad property, and they may choose to use some of those features in their eventual development of that land or not. But it helps gives us some perspective as to what our master plan is trying to achieve on the land itself. So.
Okay, great. Yeah, I would also say that, the results of phase 1 of our master planning process were really going to provide the parameters for the design competition. And then the results of that phase 1, the design competition, can be incorporated into the master plan as appropriate. I say the other benefit, to jump in and help answer that last question is publicity for the town. This is a way to get the word out there about Cape Charles and what's going on in Cape Charles. But for the purposes of our schedule, that means that phase 3 is kind of put off until this fall sometime, most likely after we can incorporate some of the results of that design competition. All right, let's talk about stakeholder input from phase 1. Stakeholder engagement included a site visit and interviews with questions with staff, town council interviews, as well as a kickoff work session with town council, 1 public input survey that was available online, 2 in-person public workshops, as well as 1 steering committee meeting, our kickoff steering committee meeting. The online survey that was available to the public was the same survey that the steering committee and town council participated in. And the results from the public, the in-person public engagement were really very informative, and we had great participation. Over 123 folks participated in the in-person events, as well as 53 folks responded to the visioning survey. There were some pretty consistent themes throughout all of engagement. The importance of open space and parks, which you can see on the word cloud here, accessibility, planning for a mix of uses and providing services and amenities both for visitors as well as residents, ensuring compatibility with the town, which is something we talked about a lot, honoring the history of the town, the historic character of the town, but also honoring the historic working waterfront. And these high-level themes are captured in the 5 guiding principles that were developed for the master plan, and we'll look at those in a second. And the specific results from the public workshops were incorporated into the site analysis, and as well as the framework plan that Chuck and Kevin are going to present. So let's talk about the guiding principles. So to provide really structure to the analysis as well as to guide plan development, we have drafted 5 guiding principles. The market and site analysis and the framework plan are all organized around these principles, really to provide consistency, but also to test how current realities and future opportunities fit into these themes that were by and large identified by the community. And those 5 principles are to first extend the historic town pattern with compatible design. Second, support balanced small-scale mixed use that reflects Cape Charles. Next is to create a connected network of open spaces, trails, and plazas. 4th is prioritize public water access and protect the working waterfront. And the 5th is to serve as the town's connector and economic catalyst. So to summarize those, Principle 1 is really about ensuring that the street network, scale, and character of Cape Charles are extended into the site with both building and site design that's compatible with the architecture and architectural heritage of the town. Here we're really focusing on development that's seamless and visually integrated with the town. Principle 2 focuses on providing a balanced mix of uses that supports both existing and neighboring uses while allowing for those desired new uses that were identified by the community. Principle 3 is about creating an accessible and interconnected network of open spaces, trails, boardwalks, really things that, as you'll see, become the organizing framework for the plan. Principle 4 focuses on maintaining and enhancing the waterfront and the harbor activities, as well as access to the harbor, and really honoring the heritage and story of the waterfront and better integrating that area into the identity of the town. And finally, Principle 5 recognizes the potential of the site both as a bridge between different areas of the town physically, but also a connector or catalyst for economic growth. So recognizing that the site can be an economic driver that bolsters other areas of the town rather than detracting from other areas of the town.
And if anybody
Are
has
there
any
questions about the guiding principles or other things that we've covered before I turn
raise your
things over to
hand
David?
both online or in the room if you have questions. Ken?
I have some concern on number one. I agree with it. I agree with it conceptually, but as I look at the map and we talk about streets extending from the historic district across this space, it's an awful lot of streets, and I'm not sure that all of them, in my mind, make sense. You know, Pine going into private property, that is not part of the Canoni property. So I think I'd like to see a little, I agree, extending some of the streets. I'm just not sure whether it's all of those streets. So that was a question I had.
Yeah, and that's a great point, and I think you'll see when we get to the framework maps that we're not proposing the extension of all of the streets. The community identified priority streets, and then there are some other considerations, and so we can look at those when we get to the maps, to Chuck and Kevin's portion of the presentation, and refine those as necessary.
Thank you.
Rick, you got one? Anybody else in here? Online? Keep going, Catherine.
Okay, there is there was a comment that came through that says, what was the goal number of respondents? 123 seems pretty low. From our perspective, 123 people participating was actually a pretty high number. We've seen in-person participation drop off quite a bit in the last few years, so having 123 people participate in a workshop of this size was, I think, a pretty good sample for the size of the community.
Jim, I'm sorry.
All right, I'm going to
hang on.
oh, sorry.
Hi, sorry, just a question, and y'all might have covered it, I just didn't know, but in looking at these extended streets, has there been work around defining whether any of them would be pedestrian only?
Yes, and we were going to answer that question in the next handful of slides.
Got it, thank you.
There's another question online. What does community identified priority streets mean? That refers to the results from public engagement. There's public input workshops where folks identified streets that were the highest priority for extending into the site.
And we got another question in-house.
This is my last one, I promise. Funding.
Speak really close to the mic.
Funding.
I can't hear you.
Funding.
Funding.
Where does funding come for whatever modification, change, addition there is going to be here?
Sure. Did you hear that, Catherine?
I did not. Can you repeat it?
Asking about where is funding for any of the settled upon master plan
improvements seen for this property. Again, depending on ownership of the land, that funding may come from the private property owner and developer. If the town has a stake of ownership in any of the land, we may look for grants. We would have to put that into a capital plan if it required capital or tax dollars to come forward. We're not there to determine how the funding should be pursued at this point. We have negotiated with the Berkeley Group that we could use some of their services if we elected to use them for helping us apply for certain grants, depending upon how this process shakes itself out. So.
But those are the kinds of questions we will be delving more into during phase 2 and 3 of the planning process.
Okay, you're
Are
on.
we ready to move on?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to let David talk now. He's going to talk about progress on the comparable communities and economic analysis for the site.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you everyone for allowing me to speak to you today. I have to start out with an apology. My colleague Liz Povar was not able to come. Usually we present as the dynamic duo, but she got a call from the governor's office and was asked to be in a meeting with the lieutenant governor of Virginia. And when the lieutenant governor or the governor calls, you answer. So she sends her apologies, and hopefully I can cover the economic analysis appropriately. First of all, I want to say that these 3 localities that we ended up with, and just as a reminder, we started out with about 12 different localities that we had done some very high-level investigation to see what might be most comparable to Cape Charles and some of the issues that you're facing and desires and those types of things. And originally we had Beaufort, North Carolina and St. Michael's in the list, but we did not have Edenton. And in our kickoff meeting with council, one of the members came up and said, why don't you take a look at Edenton? And we did, and decided that, that might be a pretty good one to put in, and it was the right thing to do. So these are our 3 localities, both North Carolina, Edenton, North Carolina, and St. Michael's, Maryland. And some of the reasons, I go back to the first stakeholder input or public engagement sector sessions, and what came out of some of those sessions. And we have key takeaways from that are related to each one of these. So for St. Michael's, one of the key takeaways for how it fits in with what Cape Charles is about is St. Michael's shows how a working harbor plus tourism plus walkable streets can coexist without losing authenticity. Edenton was the key takeaway that was comparable to Cape Charles. Edenton demonstrates how public access, parks, and historic context can anchor a waterfront destination without over-commercialization. And then Beaufort, North Carolina, their key takeaway for Cape Charles was Beaufort illustrates how connectivity investments, that will be trails, water transport, and signage, directly reinforce economic vitality while preserving working waterfront identity. So I think the 3 that we worked on together with you and picked to do analysis is absolutely perfect, and it's been a pleasure to work on these. Edenton was such a good addition because they had a philosophy of they call it the now future, and what that means is that 20 years ago they started looking at what they had in building stock, underused properties, those types of things, and said, what does the future look like? What are we going to need in the future? And what can we do now to ensure that that happens? And just as an example, Edenton bought or acquired an old cotton mill complex. So it was a fairly large building, but it had outbuildings, and it also had worker housing on the site. So they bought it for $600,000. And over the interim 20 years, they made sure that the zoning was correct, that the infrastructure was kept up to date and improved, and other things were done to enhance that facility. Well, now they've got 2 developers, at least 2 developers in there. One is developing the main building into a multi-use project, commercial as well as residential. And then the worker housing is being developed as new housing stock for the community. So it's a great philosophy that they demonstrated, I think we've learned a lot. And I go back to what Katie said when she was talking about the design competition. It's about learning. Our part of this is learning from others. So how do we do that? Well, we started out with a bench or online research baseline analysis of each of these localities. And we already started identifying, where there might be some crossover and some recommendations that could be made based on how they're handling some of the common issues that you have. One great example, though, is we found a harbor master plan that was done for Beaufort, and we were able to analyze that and pull some takeaways from that. But the bench research really was all about economic and demographic profiling, so we've got those done for each of these localities. But the data is great, looking at things at a distance is great, learning from that, but really where the rubber meets the road is on these targeted interviews. So our goal was either to interview economic developers, town officials, or tourism, or some combination of the three. And I think that this has been the slowest in going, and it always is. Any project we've done trying to do stakeholder input and interviews can be tough, but these are all public officials, town officials, or county officials, and between all the holidays we had at the end of Christmas and all the weather events, they've all been pretty busy. So we finished with has great input from Edenton, and that was interesting because instead of having to interview 2 or 3 different people, the person that I interviewed was the assistant town manager, but he was also the economic developer for the county and the town, because Edenton is the only municipality in John County, and he was also director of Visit Downtown. So we had the trifecta right there with one individual, and great source of input and suggestions from that. So we finished Edenton. Beaufort, I have an interview with their town manager tomorrow, and he's an interesting guy because he's been town manager at Beaufort for over 2 years. But prior to that, he was 11 years in Emerald Isle, North Carolina, which is it's the island, which is Atlantic Beach and a bunch of different communities on an Albert Island across from Beaufort. So he knows the region, he knows the Crystal Coast, as they call it, and obviously he knows Beaufort also. So I'll finish him up tomorrow. Liz is still struggling a little bit trying to get St. Michael's to respond, but I talked to her yesterday, and she said she should have something lined up with them within the next week or so, and we'll finish that. So we have 25 prompt questions that we use in these interviews, broken down roughly from the different categories of things that we were asked to look into, and also to try to match those guiding principles. Once we finish all the interviews, and we've already written up reports with on the economic and demographic profiling of things, we'll consolidate all these inputs, both from the bench, online research, and the targeted interviews, and we'll consolidate all those inputs around the guiding principles for the project. And I think that was in your packet just an example of how some of the input that we've had, or the takeaways that we've had so far under guiding principles. But we'll expand those with all the information that we've been able to gather under those principles that have takeaways. And then finally, we'll synthesize all those results and feedback, and we'll send that report to the Berkeley group to inform plans and recommendations, and really to confirm some of the ideas that have already come across and some of the solutions that have already come across. So this is a way to inform and to confirm things that the design team in Berkeley can use in their creation of their plan as they move forward. That's really, we'll have everything buttoned up on our reports to Berkeley no later than the 24th, so in time for phase 2, where the beginning of the plan really begins to come together based on that. So that's really what I have for today. Happy to take any questions or concerns you might have.
Were there any questions from online, Jack?
There's just mute yourself because there's some background
Okay. Any questions from in the room? I'm sorry.
There's a local planning commission in the town of Cape Charles, and I'm wondering, is this being closely coordinated with that local planning commissions as to how this fits in with their broader plan?
Sure, thank you. And I should, if those who don't know Tom used to be on our board of zoning, he was on the planning commission.
Yes, I am now.
Many years ago. And now the county level. Ian is actually a representative from the planning commission. Ken Buda is a town council member. Sorry.
Ken Buda is a town council member. Ian McDonald is our representative from the Planning Commission. Tara Ashworth is also online, and she's a member of the town council appointed to this project management team. Steve Bennett is been appointed. He is a representative from the HOA. Thank you. They call themselves something else. The POA. Some other name from Bay Creek, as a citizen representative, and I mention his name because he also was on town council for many years and involved with the Harbor Development Board as well when he was a town official. Stuart Smith is also online. He is currently serving on the Harbor Development Board and has been a part of that harbor process for 15-20 years as well. The Planning Commission is being looped in on all of these communications. They're being CC'd on all of this, provided this information as well. So ultimately, this is a town council right now dictated process for a planning project. But we are retaining the Planning Commission to be informed as it's moving through its motions. And again, Ian, as the direct representative, is keeping them informed as well. So, sure.
Any other questions? Okay, keep on moving.
All right, I'm actually going to turn it over, I guess, to Chuck, and it's going to walk you through some site conditions analysis, and then we'll dive into the framework plan. So I'm going to stop sharing, Chuck, if you want to, or Kevin, one of you wants to take over.
Sounds good. Is everybody seeing that?
Yes.
Great. Good morning, everyone. My name is Chuck Rapp. I'm a planner and landscape architect here with Collins Engineering, and excited to finally have the opportunity to collaborate with everyone in the town and start talking about some of the planning and design aspects of this. I'm going to talk about the existing conditions and how they kind of relate to the guiding principles. And then we'll hand it over to Kevin to talk about how this kind of come together to start to establish the starting point of a framework for this design basis. First, I'll say, we want this to be a collaborative process, so I'll pause after each slide and answer questions about that topic. We can have some discussion to make sure we get this right. For instance, the question about roads earlier is a great one. That's the type of feedback we want to have to really kind of promote that collaborative approach to this and make sure we get it right. So starting with one thing I'll say is that each of these maps you'll see is a consistent map on each of these guiding principles for this conditions analysis, just to help orient everyone and make sure that we're all on the same page here. We have Mason Avenue up here, kind of the historic Cape Charles to the north, work your way down around the outer harbor, inner harbor, the yacht club, the concrete facility, the Bay Creek development here at the south, what everybody knows as the hump over here, and the Rails to Trails project kind of coming in right there. So with that, we'll start with this first guiding principle of extending the historic town pattern and compatible design. So really looking at as discussed earlier, kind of this idea of the existing street grid and what are those opportunities to potentially bring some of those streets in. And we're starting really with Mason Avenue here. It's really, especially on the northern side, you have the commercial component on the ground floor, really active street. You have a portion of that where we have some of the newer development to the south. So we just wanted to highlight the opportunity to really extend that to the east and west as these properties get developed.
to continue that really vibrant corridor there of a lot of active commercial uses on the ground floor, some potential residential above them. What you'll see here in green too is the existing railroad easement. So with the notion that we need to preserve that easement for future railroad activity if it ever were to be requested to be brought back. Probably not a great opportunity for development, but a pretty good opportunity to create some open space, really preserve some of the views of the harbor, and create this kind of buffer zone from the development as you approach the water. So we talk about streets. The idea really is to bring that street grid down, and so we want to sort of really analyze the different types of streets that we have out there. And so we've identified 3 different types of streets as a starting point here. Peach Street, more of the boulevard approach. On the northern section there, we have the raised median. That transitions to parking in the center of the road. Wide street, really generous right-of-way, parking on the sides. You have wide sidewalks. And just with the alignment of that, really seems like a great opportunity to extend Peach Street on down, especially to the harbor there, to the parking area, and provide that main connection all the way up to the Central Park to the north. So you really have this great corridor all the way up and down, reaching down to the harbor. Kind of our next classification of streets, which we're calling a commercial street or so, is Strawberry Street and Nectarine Street. So again, a wide, generous right-of-way, parking on both sides, some outdoor dining, things like that along the streetscapes, really active as well. And you can see here with Nectarine Street, for instance, great opportunity to connect that all the way down to Bayshore Road to really kind of continue that grid approach. One thing we're trying to do here is mimic the existing grid system that's up to the north in the existing historic portion of Cape Charles there. That will really help to reinforce the idea of the right scale of development for these properties by limiting the block size to something similar. So that's one of these things that this extending this grid really helps to do. With Strawberry Street, we have the existing plaza that's out there now, so that could be either an extension of that plaza or picking up the street again on the back side of that to connect back down. So you have a couple of different options as to how Strawberry Street could evolve throughout the planning phase here. And lastly, we have the local streets. Still generous right-of-way, tree-lined streets. You might have parking on one side or so. Really about kind of moving vehicles, or in y'all's case, oftentimes golf carts. Extending those, Pine Street, Plum Street, and Fig Street. Fig Street really provides an opportunity just to access this property that's over on this side for future development. We need access. It does have some access from the backside here, but given the size of it, another connection to the south there to connect in. And so with Harbor Avenue, for instance, is a good example. We didn't think that had any reason to really extend, especially knowing that there is potential private development of this property that's been in consideration for a while. Didn't really want to bisect that property. So kind of looking at these streets, you see some are potential to extend all the way through the green space, all the way down to the harbor. Other ones might stop short of that just to provide some access into properties. And other ones might connect all the way down to kind of create more of a grid system and further expand kind of the transportation network of that area. One thing we are kind of noting too here is a great opportunity to kind of connect this. If this were to develop into a green space along this railroad corridor, where the easement is, maybe an opportunity to really create some kind of a public plaza or something like that on this small portion here with some great views out into the water. It's really it's kind of limited potential for development there with everything that's going on. So with that slide, before I maybe move on, I might pause and ask if there's any questions about kind of this initial analysis of extending that stroke pattern down.
We got a question in-house.
Yeah, the question is, in extending Nectarine the way you do, is there a solution that fixes how Old Cape Charles Road drops into there right next to Mason Avenue? I think that's a very dangerous looking intersection the way you've drawn that.
It is. So yes, I'll talk about that too. We've looked at a number of options to kind of what to do here. You typically want roads to hit intersections like that at perpendicular or 90-degree angles. We've heard a lot of feedback about the long-term desire to maybe remove the hump. So this really is a long-term goal, I think. So one of our thoughts was maybe to approach this as we move further throughout the planning process as like a two-phased option, a short-term, recognizing that the hump is an extremely costly project to remove. Need to find a way to create more of a network of streets here and some other ways to move around vehicles for the most part. And so this long-term goal of acknowledging that we would love, it sounds like there's support to remove that hump and really bring Fig down and Nectarine down. But maybe there's a short-term goal of how we plan this. So that's one of the things we wanted to kind of at least talk about as we work through this. And Kevin will be able to show a little more of that with the framework plan about what that might look like. Because yeah, certainly just crossing right now, this would need to be rerouted as a way to hit 90 degrees or turn this up a level. But one way or another, we do need to kind of get a road down here just with the size of this land area down here. It really needs to find a way to kind of bisect it and provide access into that property. So it's certainly something we've noted, and I agree with you, it's a challenge. The intersection is difficult right now. We look at things like maybe what a roundabout work there, or a couple of different ways to maneuver that, but especially with the property here, it seems like the long-term goal of establishing a grid with maybe the hump being lowered and further connecting that would be the most optimal solution long-term moving forward. So,
Chuck, I think that if I could just bring in a little bit about the hump, there's been a lot of public discussion around that, and I don't think there is the consensus in the community at all about removing the hump. I think that's pretty much it stays. When you hear the feedback that we've received from the community, I don't think that's one where we want to go.
Okay, well that's good to know. That'll certainly help us to identify which roads to extend there. So that does limit the ability for Nectarine to pass on through, as was noted earlier. So we'll need to find a different route to accomplish that. Any other questions on this one?
Just a quick one.
Yep, hang on.
So when you mentioned the roundabout, you were thinking about that right there at Nectarine and Mason to flow to the hump and flow across if Nectarine crosses, or were you thinking about that someplace else?
Yeah, I was thinking about that as an opportunity to bring Nectarine through, just because of the way this the intersection works right now. Doesn't meet typical design standards for how you lay out roads, with just this parallel road kind of hitting at such a sharp angle. So it would still require some reconfiguration, but as a way to deal with multiple roads, oftentimes hitting an intersection, a roundabout can be a pretty good solution for that. Kind of bring it all together and slow down traffic. Yeah, the idea there too, it would serve as kind of a neat gateway. Slow down traffic, everybody's coming in, way to slow down traffic right here as you're kind of approaching the core of Mason Avenue there.
And then we do have one question online. The opportunity for a public plaza, is that land owned by the town?
No, I mean, obviously it isn't right now. But, you know, I think as far as planning and trying to create a vision for this area, we want to keep all opportunities open. And so, you know, when we're talking about a public plaza or a public park on the railroad property or things like that, you know, that would all have to be worked out as throughout this planning process with some recommendations for the town moving forward.
I just want to make a comment just for those who are online and those who are present. Canoni Atlantic owns the property. The town does not. And the railroad property. The town does not own it. And these are opportunities for us to create a plan of what we would love to see this happen in the next 20 years. Zoning is going to be part of that. We're going to talk about how in the end of this is how we're going to rezone this so that we can see these things happen. But we don't own the property. We're only looking at how we would like to see this thing developed at this point. So keep that in mind. We don't own the property, the plaza. These are just ideas that they're talking about. The plaza, where it is, you know, that would have to be an agreement that would come along if Canoni decides to do something in the future. But at this point, we're just looking at the big picture.
Moving on? Okay, cool. Next guiding principle is support balanced, small-scale, mixed use that reflects Cape Charles. So here, we really started overlaying the existing zoning that the town has, and then tried to look at potential land uses. So we're just kind of working our way around, kind of as noted earlier, private development on this area that's already kind of been underway for a number of years there, so I wanted to acknowledge that. And then, as I mentioned, just really extending this kind of active commercial zone along Mason Avenue, especially with the ground floor and potential residential above it. It seemed like a great transition just to kind of further that with kind of this mixed-use portion here, just north of the railroad easement, where again you could have some apartments and condos on upper floors, ground floor retail, coffee shops, restaurants, outdoor seating, and kind of really kind of promote that similar approach towards development just south of the Mason Avenue corridor. Working down to the outer harbor area. Again, an opportunity to kind of really expand the marine services, harbor access. Maybe that's improved parking and providing additional parking, trailer parking. We've heard things about, creating a convenience store, expanding bathrooms and restroom services, space for a harbor master. So really kind of identifying that might be a goal in this area here, as well as you kind of work your way around the harbor. Felt like this portion right here could be a good opportunity to expand some of those services, provide maybe more parking, or one of the ideas we've thrown out, maybe like a market space that could really support some of the working waterfront idea. Open air market or something like that. They could sell goods and things. You go get your fresh fish there, get your fresh catch, things like that, especially as you have more residential kind of coming down in this area. Acknowledging on the backside here, there was some feedback, public input about maybe recreation opportunities. And as this is a nice wooded area here too, you have some topography challenges with the hump right behind it. Thought might be a good location here for some of those more active recreation opportunities or just open space as well. Kind of working away on the other side of the hump. Thought this might be a good opportunity to provide another type of housing, maybe more mid-density housing, something like townhomes, and that kind of good transition from more of the condos, the apartments, the mixed use, to something more residential as you work your way around, and that would hopefully help to support the commercial activity that we have right here on the opposite side on Big Street there. Didn't really feel like we should push much more commercial since we already have some new commercial in that area. And then kind of working your way around the harbor, you already have the yacht services down here, kind of the light industrial, working your way to the concrete plant. Wanted to leave that as is and respect that to just continue and work in that aspect. So, so we had for the guiding principle 2, happy to answer any questions on that one. Again, this is just high level kind of land use, just thinking about potential uses out there.
Any comments from in the room? Online?
Great.
Hearing none. Keep on going.
All right, moving on. Guiding principle 3 really focuses on creating this network of public spaces, trails, plazas, so we're talking about connectivity for the most part with a pedestrian focus. So obviously we have the railway easement, which could become a great linear park. It could extend all the way over to the new parking for the Rails to Trails project there and provide that connectivity. So folks could come all the way in from this area, connect to that park. And then that's what kind of fed this idea of maybe a plaza here as well. So you have kind of this destination that can maybe tell the history of the waterfront, of the rail line coming in, bringing passengers, and kind of really support the rich history of this area. Certainly wanted to connect the boardwalk that we have out there. So the idea of connecting that all the way over to the beachfront and then all the way around. I know there's the improvement project out there right now, and then really the idea of connecting that all the way around the harbor, all the way out till you get to Base Row Lane here. Providing, this really great boardwalk, great views along the harbor as you get out there. Down in this area, we have kind of some resource management areas, some wetlands, some floodplain areas, and so Really great opportunities there for trails, for boardwalks, and like that, just provide additional connections for community members, especially folks living south there to the Bay Creek development and surrounding kind of residential areas to connect into the harbor. And then up here we have the existing plaza. That plaza could be extended on down, provide a neat connection to the future linear park, or maybe some small portion of that plaza gets extended, just to kind of continue with that existing urban fabric that's out there and bring that on down. That's kind of what we have for the credit card number 3. Happy to answer any questions on that one. All good?
Got a question, hang on.
So all the flood zones that you've highlighted in there, especially as you come back towards Bayshore Lane through there, seem to, you've got, in the previous map, you show light industrial sitting right up on top of that, as well as commercial sitting up on top of some of that RMA area further up. What limitations do we have, and what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so this right here this is just carrying forward the existing town zoning. It has commercial right here right now, then open space around it. It's actually outside of our project area, but just kind of wanted to acknowledge that there is light industrial out there right now with the yacht repair services. Just didn't separate it. Certainly we could kind of separate that tighter so that it did respect this idea of this being a preserved green space, and I think that'll kind of be the next evolution of land use. So I think it's a good point. With resource management areas, it's definitely identifying if there's some sensitive places out there. So you have resource protection areas, which have very established requirements, and resource management areas that identify the potential for that and encourage that if the area were to be developed, you need to take that into account and potentially implement some preservation or sensitive development approaches to that.
So we do have 2 questions. Well, one's a statement. Elise says the Impact Center is working to develop a trail there. And then John Kemp says, what is the Impact Center? So is answer yes, the town is planning on removing the sewer pumping station?
We honestly haven't gotten to that. Like I said, this is very high level at this point. We're just kind of putting large swaths of potential land uses on this and what to do out there. So we haven't analyzed exactly the pattern of development that'll come forward as we work through the framework plan.
Sure. Just to clarify a little further for everybody, the Impact Center is the former Rosenwald School property, and they are at the eastern side of that square parcel that says Wetlands Resource Management Area, where that language is. They are working on a trail system around their area where there are wetlands on their property. We hope to have a plan coming forward from the Rosenwald School within the next month or so. I'm hoping, a concept plan that will kind of show that trail development. As soon as we have something from them, we'll of course share that with our consultants as well. When I cross that dotted black line and you see a lot more wetlands, that is a property owned by Mr. Kemp's organization. And there are some allowances under the Chesapeake Bay Act for development that is dependent with water usage. So again, depending on what type of a development he's trying to do, if it is intrinsically tied to being a water-dependent development, and I don't mean you need to have water to use the development like a hotel. I don't mean that, but actually the development is contingent upon its operations to be close to the water system of the bay or the harbor. There are allowances for development of that type to also occur in there, as well as what is being considered from our consultants of some sort of network system or passive recreation back there. I think I answered 2 questions. Oh, the pump station, thank you. There is if I'm correct, if what is being referred to is the pump station that is not at the south side of the harbor, do you mean the pump station that is on Mason Avenue and Bay? I hope that's the one you're talking about. That is going to be retained by Virginia American Water. They are proposing some renovations to that and improve the fencing around it, but they are not looking to remove that pump station as being a physical structure at that location. So, there we go.
Good. Okay. Next guiding principle was to prioritize public water access and protect the working waterfront. So this overlay is really just about providing that access to the harbor through a variety of means. As discussed earlier, is you have Peach Street coming down, providing that additional connection in. Currently, you really have your main route in is from the south right here, so I think just providing that additional connection from Peach Street on down as another way to get there, whether it's for people working on the waterfront or getting there for recreation or leisure, still provides that additional connection point that would certainly help to emphasize the ability to get out there, as well as connecting this boardwalk all the way around to the beachfront, and connecting that so that you have this continuous route from the north up to the beach, as well as all the way down to the south to the Bay Creek development and other neighborhoods to the south, so that you have official sidewalks, boardwalks, things like that to get there. And then if Nectarine was able to be extended, again, another route for folks to kind of get in there, starting to create kind of a street network grid to promote additional access points in there. And then, again, building on the idea of the working waterfront, continue to expand services for marina services, for harbor services, additional parking, which could be completed in this area, or if this area were to be expanded here, potential development that would relate to that harbor and some of the activities and the work going on out there. One of the things we also heard was a need to expand bathroom opportunities, create a convenience store. We talked to the harbor master, and she was saying she really a more of a permanent location with a better view of the harbor. We felt all those things, there's a potential to do something here on this corner, which provides great visibility, great access as kind of the central hub, as what that could be. And I think Kevin will speak to that a little bit once he gets into some a little more conceptual ideas in the framework. So that's what we have for this guiding principle. I'll have to answer any questions on this one.
Anyone in-house? Online?
I have,
Got one in-house, hang on.
Sort of an underlying question, really, that applies to broad categories here, what you're talking about, but I'm talking about resource constraints and more specifically the water, because if it's my understanding is correctly, we have one aquifer which serves either just the lower eastern shore or maybe in fact the entire eastern shore. And the expansion, while it really looks good on the surface, could be a really difficult topic to deal with when it comes to that sort of thing. So it's just a general question.
I'm going to take that one, Chuck.
I'm sorry, a lot of that got broken up.
Sure. The question that Tom posed was relative to the eastern shore being served by a single source aquifer and how that addresses to water usage and growth factors with that. And yes, the eastern shore is a single source aquifer. The town of Cape Charles, when it sold its utility system to Virginia American Water, transferred all of its permits that it has from the state for groundwater recharge and for pulling water out for our water system. And at this point, Virginia American Water also received from the town a existing water usage study as well as growth projections throughout the town, both on our infill lots for all of Bay Creek and for planned subdivisions that have not come online in Bay Creek, as well as for the railroad and harbor properties, and growth factors within the commercial district as well. And within that capacity study that was provided to VAW, we do feel that we are within our capacity of withdrawal. They are seeking, VAW is continuing to seek an increase to the withdrawal capacity gallonage that is pulled for the town of Cape Charles. And that permit right now has been paused while VAW is bringing on the Keck well. It's a famous well in this town. The town has owned this property, has the intention of always putting a well in there to add to our system of pulling water in to service the community. It just never got constructed until now, until the needs have now indicated we needed to bring that well source online. VAW is doing that through their capital project. And so at this point in time, we're still working with VAW in the town on what is the future capital plan to ensure that we have provided both water and sewer infrastructure to support growth factors in the town of Cape Charles. So it's a great point. Yeah. Go for it.
So, question from John Kemp. What are the town's plans to develop the land around the town docks? You mentioned convenience store and possibly some other uses. Is town dock profitable and providing income and revenue to the town tax base?
And Chuck could probably weigh on this. The town currently has no plans to build a convenience store, and the operations and maintenance of the harbor itself, the inner harbor, by the town was taken over in the last year. It was privatized prior to that for 5 years. The town just resumed those operations in the last year. Relative to the profitability, I'm not privy to where the harbor fund sits relative to revenues versus expenditures, but again, I think that's going to be addressed during the upcoming budget process that starts here in the next month or so with town council. We'll be looking at that and can answer that more broadly then. But during the input session taking that we did with the consultants, there was expressed a desire from town officials of the need to provide a better harbor master facility or structure over in that corner of the harbor, maybe with some additional space to provide ancillary services to the boating public, such as offering some of the amenities for sale there that could be found in a convenience store. But again, there was just a desire expressed, but not really a plan of action established by the town for that.
Thank you, Katie. And I would say, as these areas develop, we know there's going to be a draw that's going to become a focal point of the town. A lot more activity in the harbor area as all these properties are developed over time, and I think those services are going to be needed, to help really create a sense of identity and serve all of these visitors coming, additional parking, and so really just identifying an opportunity for that in the future. What specifically that becomes, we don't know at this time, but I just want to acknowledge that as this becomes more of an attraction and much more population density around here, something will certainly probably be needed for improvements there to help direct traffic and provide parking and provide some of those typical services for folks visiting the harbor area. All right, our last guiding principle on existing conditions kind of brings everything together, serve as the town's connector and economic catalyst. Again, a lot of stuff we've already kind of gone over, this idea of providing these additional connection points down, providing the connectivity to the existing historic Cape Charles neighborhoods, whether it's from pedestrian accesses or from the beach on down, or vehicular accesses from Peach, or potentially bring Nectarine on through to Bayshore. Once we figure out how to deal with this intersection, opportunities for kind of continue this mixed-use zone as you see along Mason Avenue and expanding that further down. Opportunities to extend open space, recreation, kind of bring that on into the harbor. And then again, this idea of improving parking and expanding harbor services, marine services, maybe a market space in this area to really kind of create this vibrant economic hub for the town. So that's what I have for the existing conditions analysis. If there's any questions, happy to answer them on that.
We do, hang on.
Did you consider where you've got the recreation open space opportunity along the easement, actually running a road there that's 60-something feet wide, where you could put a road with significantly wide sidewalks or even a bike path along the edge of that to provide better, for the connectivity part of and the economic development part of the the requirement here or the principle?
Yeah, we've looked at also, one of our ideas is to provide some parking along the edges of it, things like that. So I think there's still going to be a road with it. I know some of the public feedback wanted to make sure that we kind of preserve some views of the water. So the idea is an open space there does create a nice buffer. And one of the things we need to think about is kind of the grid system as far as, developable blocks, how big those are. The current blocks are around 300 feet in width. And so we kind of bring that down, and that starts to lay out a grid system that you'll see a little bit more in the framework. So yeah, the actual size of that open space will change a little bit, and there will be some roads that you'll see. I didn't want to get too far into laying out new roads with the existing conditions analysis. We wanted to save that for the framework. But this kind of just starts to show you some of the potential of extending what's out there existing right now.
So this is Monica Hollinger. First of all, I do appreciate whoever spoke up and talked about the hump, because the feedback about removing the hump was, there was a lot about that. I think my concern is, and I can't quote what you just said, the urban economic or vibrant economic part of this. I don't want us to overbuild, right? When you talked about the housing, over to the right of the hump or wherever, multi-level housing or whatnot. A couple things. We've got one road coming into Cape Charles. It's a 2-lane. And then if the long-term plan is to expand that even more, and then we have a lot of congestion and whatnot, I just would caution us to quote unquote not to overdevelop, because then you do head towards a Virginia Beach, you do head towards other northeastern looking resort areas, and folks aren't coming here for that. And I'm not against progress at all, not at all. But I think we have to be more mindful of really what is the balance. And from what I am just hearing and seeing, it might be a little bit of overdevelopment. I know some of the development is to get more people to come off season. Totally understand that. However, we are really, really seasonal. And so whatever we develop, we have to be 100% sure it is going to bring people in off season. We see this in Virginia Beach. They're very seasonal. And most of, I shouldn't say most, a lot of the stores, restaurants, all of that is associated with their tourism, they close during the winter because they can't support off season. So it's just something to think about as we move forward with this.
Thank you. That's good feedback. I will say some of the ways that we can try to approach that as we get more refined are some recommendations for zoning as far as the intensity of development, the density of developments, the percentage of open space required, things like that, to make sure that it's not, as your fear is certainly justified, of just massive development, everything being built up. And so as it kind of gets more detailed, preserving some of those views and corridors and open space, things like that, can get flushed out and guidance for moving forward to ensure that you don't end up with that product.
And that's fair. And then I realize it becomes, then it's a return on investment.
Right.
Just like the question previously about are the town docks profitable? So understand all that. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. All right. Well, I am going to, if that's all, I'm going to stop sharing and let Kevin dive into kind of the next evolution of this.
Excellent. Thank you, Chuck, for that introduction, and thank you, Catherine, for kicking us off. Can everybody see that screen?
Yes.
Yes. Great. My name is Kevin Schaefer. I am an architect. We are based in Charlottesville, Virginia, and it is a pleasure to be here at King Charles today. I have to commend everyone in the room. I thought the attendance is really kind of impressive, and the amount of feedback we're given to date has been really helpful. Just a little bit of sort of logistics of how I would like to present the framework that we've heard. This is a direct sort of call and response from the guiding principles that have been sort of extracted through this public engagement process. And then we use the existing condition analysis that Chuck just provided to sort of build and layer on potential findings and potential framework. And so if you don't mind, I'll just go through the whole 10 slides that we have here that sort of call and response each item. And then this is the first sort of step in our conversation. We really appreciate the collaboration so far, and we're looking forward to continuing it. So at that point, just open it up to discussion and feedback. We've already heard some really great feedback today, and so that might contradict some of the slides, but I think it'll give us a direction ahead. There's a lot of overlap here between the existing conditions and the proposed framework, just because we're allowing the town to inform and influence the framework that is being proposed. So as Chuck mentioned, the guiding principle one, we're taking those diagrams that Chuck presented and brought to the table and trying to flesh out what that might really start to look like in terms of street right-of-ways and streetscapes, and extending those through this harbor in an effort to, extending them through this harbor greenway in an effort to connect downtown more efficiently and effectively with the harbor front. And so Chuck has mentioned a lot of these already, is bringing these key streets through and getting the historic block structure down towards the harbor. Certainly preserving key elements like the boulevard at Peach, and the potential for the pedestrian plaza at Strawberry. The goal is just to take this block structure and pull it down towards the harbor. We've had the opportunity to sort of explore what these potential streetscapes look like. A boulevard section, as you all well know, allows for interior street trees. It allows for potential parking on both sides of the street. And that's a real asset as Peach Street moves down towards the harbor. The street section at Strawberry, or the streets we're identifying as commercial streets, are wider streets, options for parking, options for pedestrian amenity space on either side. And I think, one thing the town to decide on, and the people in the room to weigh in on, is does that Strawberry Street Plaza continue as pedestrian and extends down towards the harbor as your main pedestrian thoroughfare? And then Pine Street, Plum Street, and any other streets that we're starting to pull through still have a very generous street section based on the historic right-of-ways that we're pulling down towards the harbor. The next step, as we are thinking about guiding principle one, is how do we start to limit these super blocks, these large areas that don't have any developable sort of road frontage currently. And the main move there is to introduce east-west connectors in the locations that are shown. Now, 4 is the existing connector through the inner harbor, which is happening right here and around towards the shanty and the parking. But one goal of this may be to sort of formalize that vehicular circulation and to improve its connectivity to downtown. Right now, as we all know, Mason Ave is sort of the hard line that's cast east-west and prevents moving down towards the harbor. So these streets pull in the south direction, and then they are linked and connected by these proposed east-west connectors that can start to break down the super blocks, give us more street fronts, And the idea number 2 here would be to develop sort of a secondary Mason Ave or a secondary Main Street. We've talked already about, the challenges that are faced at Nectarine Ave. But I think this slide does illustrate the importance of getting some sort of north-south connector through here that will connect to Bayshore and connect the historic town in a way that pulls people down. Our second principle is to support balanced, small-scale mixed use. And a lot of that language is already being formed along Mason Ave. Mason Ave is a vibrant, historic main street that is functioning well, and we can take note of that and extend it and encourage development along that front, as well as getting recognizable city blocks. So Chuck mentioned our typical blocks are 300 feet deep. Breaking down the blocks and extending the grid in a way that is recognizable to Cape Charles is a strong goal and allows for more of the same development that's happening along Mason Ave. This articulates the idea of an opportunity for that sort of secondary main street along here as well. My favorite guiding principle, I think, is this network of public spaces and trails. The concept here would be to strengthen what's already there and utilize this real asset of this linear park potential that is formed by the railroad easement. And when we first learned about the easements, it was like, oh wow, that's going to really kind of limit what is possible here from a development perspective. I don't think there's any developers who want to put a building on a railroad easement. And so how can we turn that existing condition into an asset? Well, first we extend and strengthen the harbor walk. There's a great thing going on with the harbor walk around here. It was the main walk when we toured the city that we utilized, even though it was under construction. And then how can we encourage and strengthen the connection back to the beachfront? So the harbor is this very important thing, and then, sort of the other hand of that is the beachfront. So extending the harbor walk to the beachfront and connecting with the love sign that's there, the pier access, and the picnic shelter here, and creating this sort of harbor walk that links to these pocket parks could be a really strong draw. It could be a really strong amenity for the town. Chuck talked about the idea of this outer harbor park preserving views out towards the harbor, but then also linking up with an inner harbor park inside here. There's currently a gazebo and some green space, and strengthening that, and then moving on to the wetland resource management area and continuing that harbor all the way around. Pausing just to talk about what does this linear park actually mean, or what it looks like. I want to bring up a precedent from Lynchburg, Virginia, where they have a similar sort of linear park alongside the James River. It's become very, very vibrant and successful in the past several years. It's a place of community gathering. They do their fireworks here. They have Fridays after 5, or they are now just installing a gathering area that can be used as a bandstand. You can see there's a splash pad that's already been installed here, and a public park, and a big, large green space. But it's not just a large open green space. It does have some infrastructure associated with it. As Chuck mentioned, we can put parking alongside it to sort of formalize and add more parking for people who are using the harbor. And so we see this as an opportunity to connect to the rails to trail, to become a community gathering space, and to provide additional parking, to deal with some environmental and stormwater considerations, and to just be a place where we can celebrate the town's history and the heritage, with the railroad being its forefront. The barge docks are right there. And And so the idea of connecting through all the way to the rails to trails gives a really strong amenity space. As Chuck mentioned in his diagrams, is the idea of limiting development through the use of green space could become a really important aspect of this master plan. We see this opportunity here at the base of the hump. This could become, and it could even extend, I think this is a good discussion point, is this green space could be extended and provide opportunities for tennis, pickleball, basketball, and sort of become a counterpart to the Central Park right now. I had the opportunity to be in Cape Charles this winter. Our family celebrated Christmas there, and we hung out at Central Park every day. And I think that the harbor could be another place like that that has formal park systems and amenity spaces, not only for visitors, but for citizens and residents alike.
Kevin, we got a question, hang on.
Okay.
Can you elaborate more on what you just said about how these park areas will, I think you said, help you work in a greater stormwater plan?
Did you hear that, Kevin?
Sure. I think so, yes. One of the ways is by helping with stormwater, which I just mentioned. Not the civil engineer here who's going to figure out stormwater. I'll lean on Chuck for that. But green space like this offers opportunities for bioretention and water runoff mitigation measures. Particularly as the town meets the harbor, there's an opportunity for a greenscape buffer like this. And this is the strategy that's being employed in Lynchburg. The precedent that I'm using here is the town is all up the hill, and this serves as a big, beautiful ditch that captures and contains water. The landscape architect who did this would probably wish that I referred to it a little bit more eloquently than a big, beautiful ditch, but it served the same purpose as slowing down water runoff into our major waterways and capturing it and filtering it.
And
so it's just an opportunity. We have green space instead of asphalt or impervious area to retain and capture stormwater. Chuck, anything to add to that? Did I butcher that too bad?
I think you did a great job. Yeah.
Cheryl, go ahead if you got a follow-up.
So does that tie in with a larger stormwater plan in regards to the roads as well?
I think it certainly could. So as each site is developed, they'll be required to meet the state's requirements to capture and treat stormwater runoff. And as the infrastructure of roads come in, there's more and more runoff. That can be handled a variety of ways, whether it's individual sites, smaller sites, or larger spaces like this that could both be recreation purposes that, as Kevin noted, aren't paved over. To help treat some of that and capture, especially with the location right before you get to the water. Some beautiful ways to handle stormwater that are great amenities to communities. So, as Kevin noted, it's an opportunity, I believe.
Okay, I just want to finish up with, that's part of why I'm here. We have a big stormwater problem in Cape Charles, and it particularly affects where I live at Myrtle Landing. And I love your idea of these park areas becoming part of the solution for that. But a bigger concern, as I've sat here, is, and you really didn't answer my question, I don't think you did, is there a bigger focus on the whole problem of stormwater, and how does that tie into this entire project? Because we are living on the bay, and everything we do here affects the bay. And I'll finish with that. Thank you.
Now, I'm going to take that one, guys. From the oversight of stormwater management, that is a function of our zoning ordinance.
and it is project and property specific as development occurs, and as legislation change relative to the governance of stormwater, because it has changed over the years to actually be much more complex more recently. I'm looking at a developer who knows what I'm talking about. So in that regard, each project is contingent upon having stormwater conducted as part of its review as you're proposing to add any infrastructure, whether that be road systems, sidewalks, driveways, buildings, any sort of hardscaping surface. There's required stormwater measurements that must be adhered to and made a part of that development project. So again, it's not that we are necessarily doing it as a town-wide review process. It is actually project-specific. So.
And there was one question online, says, I would like to learn if there are any plans to recommend inclusionary zoning policy recommendations to ensure that this area remains affordable and does not contribute more to the displacement of locals. Chuck mentioned selling fresh catch, as if locals could afford to operate one of those proposed storefronts.
I think the answer, I'll jump in, Chuck, Kevin. I think the answer to that question and even the stormwater management question is those are implementation measures that we'll be looking at in phase 2 and phase 3 of the plan. And if inclusionary zoning is something that the town supports, we can certainly build that into the master plan, the entire document.
Okay to continue, Katie?
I think you're good to keep moving.
Okay, great. Thank you. Here's just some precedent images of what potential, these connected parks could start to look like, whether that's an elevated boardwalk. If you've been to Duck, North Carolina, they have a great elevated boardwalk, sort of harbor walk kind of condition. Here's some more additional, stormwater measures that still are pedestrian amenity spaces being shown here, and just the preservation of wetland resource management. Our fourth guiding principle is prioritizing and protecting the waterfront, and I think we took this as sort of two different phases. The first is to prioritize the public water access, and as Chuck and others have already mentioned, the easement, once again, sort of the railway easement, serves as an asset to this guiding principle, in that it limits how close development can get to the harbor. By the time you get to the park, there won't be any buildings blocking the way, other than sort of the existing shanty and the existing harbor master building. Additionally, opportunities we've already talked about would be the enhancing the harbor walk for more connection from a pedestrian and visitor's perspective to the waterfront itself. The highlighting the outer harbor park in this sort of really kind of challengingly shaped area in here, and making the harbor part of the community and civic center of the town, even though it's not necessarily the geographical center of the town. One of the things that we've talked about today, and Chuck had mentioned in his maps, is this is some pretty high value real estate. It's a great location at the termination of the inner harbor there, and we think that the harbor is so important to the town that space needs to be preserved for harbor use, and this is where we would potentially look at a seafood market, or encouraging the farmers market coming here, additional parking for boat trailers and people using the harbor on a daily basis, and also just formalizing the parking in here and making it as most efficient as it can. That's where some of the parking infrastructure along that greenway can start to become a real asset in adding parking space, while still providing access to the amenity space along the greenway here, but also dual purpose and dual service, using it for the harborway. It's also a working waterfront. I think that's the other hand of this. And one big could be that we'd like to get feedback on and discussion on is relocating and improving the harbor master office to the location that's shown right here. This does not propose any sort of disruption to existing docks or slips, or even the seaplane dock area, but really more getting the harbor master out into a location that says the harbor is important for Cape Charles. This is a priority for us. Potentially adding laundry or grocery or bathhouse services to that building. That could just be an investment that the town makes that says this is a working harbor, and we are committed to the people who fish out of here. Again, 6 is identified as the area where we have additional trailer parking, marina services, storage opportunities, and some potential services there as well, markets. Here's some additional imagery of what that prioritizing public water access means to us. This actually is a precedent image here from the Duck Harbor Walk, or it's actually the Sound Walk at Duck. And also here's another great precedent of just a waterfront park that starts to become civic access. I know these are small, so apologies if it's hard to read these. This is in Newport, Rhode Island, is the harbor master here, and that scale of building could work really well in the space between the outer harbor and the inner harbor at Cape Charles. And finally, our guiding principle 5 is to serve as the town's connector and economic catalyst here at the harbor, and that involves all of the things that we've been talking about, including making sure that the harbor works for both the public and the people who work out of the harbor, but also providing spaces to live, to gather, to talk about affordability, as someone brought up today. These block areas are opportunities for additional residential development. We're showing specifically number 2 here. Now, number 1 is private development, and that has a site plan that's already been approved with it. But option 2 here is identifies spaces that could become smaller to mid-sized residential opportunities. And I think we want to be very mindful of not overdeveloping these sites, but also providing more housing, potentially workforce housing, if that is what the town would like to see here. Scaled appropriately. We don't think this building should ever get above 4 stories, or 3. Every precedent image here is 3 stories or 2.5 stories. We're showing townhouses or condos or connected duplexes, those kinds of scales of housing that allows for some density, but not necessarily anything that's so out of scale for the town or that would lead to that sort of overdevelopment. The final, I think just the final summary and having all of this on the screen as we talk through this is the overarching goal is to create clear connections from downtown towards the harbor, and then to create amenity spaces for both residents and visitors alike that start to unlock some of the unique characteristics of the existing conditions, such as the railway easement and such as the existing harbor infrastructure, in an effort to just strengthen what's already there and enhance it and sort of formalize it a little bit more as we work through these master plan considerations. So eager to get feedback. With that, I'll stop, and I'm excited to hear.
Anybody in the room want to comment? Online.
So there's one question. Can you please show the site plan for the approved private development condos yacht services?
That was actually a slight misstatement. There isn't an approved site plan. Any site plans that have been presented in the town over the last decade or so have expired at this point. There is still open permits on that commercial development down on Lower Mason Avenue for water-related developments. So there are permits still open and out there from the Army Corps of Engineer and Virginia Marine Resources Commission for pier development and some dockage and some other associated water amenities. So I just wanted to state that. It doesn't mean that we can't get to an approved site plan for some sort of commercial or mixed-use development over there. It's just, to date, the current owners, the relatively new owner, but the current owner of that property has not submitted any plans to the town yet.
So as we develop these blocks with potentially residential over commercial, that will also increase parking demand. At one point, is it possible to do, so you've got Mason and then whatever the new road would be that runs east-west. In those, between the Mason side and the, I don't know what New Virginia Statesman will name that for, but a one-way alley that would allow for parking underneath buildings so that we're not adding additional parking demand and would kind of resolve some of that. I don't know if the depth is great enough to do that, but just a thought and a question.
Utilizes alleyways very well to access, rear garages or rear parking areas, and would certainly be something to employ here. What we like about some of the streetscape, and Chuck, feel free to jump in here, is that the streetscapes in Cape Charles are very generous, as you all well know, and allow frequently parking on the street, and that might not be enough, but it is a huge asset when it comes to unlocking vibrant downtown corridors, such as this one being proposed here. So the idea would certainly be a combination of street parking and formalizing parking around these existing areas in here and adding parking here, as well as unlocking some of the things that you're talking about, like alley access into back parking lots and things like that. Chuck, anything to add there?
So I think you got there's a variety of options to employ, whether it's parking alongside the park or underneath buildings, or parking lots tucked behind buildings, things like that. I think it's going to be a number of approaches to try and make sure that parking needs are met as each area is developed.
Yeah, I'll agree with Ken's point. We need to deal with parking in the whatever zoning we come up with, if that's the path we go on this, to make sure that we're not overloading the street parking in a spot like that. I like what you've done as you've kind of laid this out with a couple of east-west roads connectors in there. They make sense based on, and in the framework help clarify some of the questions that were coming up earlier there. And that green space really does play nicely with the way you've laid things out. Ken and I may disagree with the hump, but I think that picture looks lovely, but it takes out the hump. So I think the town's going to have to consider that discussion and the cost and the timing of where you go along those areas. But so.
I would also suggest that, as Jim mentioned earlier, maybe considering Strawberry as a pedestrian only, so almost like Strawberry Street Plaza is extended all the way through, which would also allow shop fronts on either side of it, but reduce auto traffic.
I'm not first and foremost.
We agree with that idea, and you have to be really mindful each time you cross this greenway here with a vehicular crossover, right? So you want to be mindful of connectivity and allowing vehicles that want to come from downtown towards the harbor, but you also want to preserve the high quality space of this linear park in here. And so that's down into the harbor. I love the idea of storefronts on that plaza, just like you have now. And I think that's a smart move.
Go ahead, Tom, you got a question or comment?
No, it's just a comment, observation.
Put it closer to your mouth.
Oh, excuse me, go ahead. Yeah. The main topic is controlled growth, and I know there's always this contradiction between economics and preserving the natural habitat and so forth. And I want to talk about culture here, though. Everybody talks about Cape Charles and what it used to be. It'll never be that same thing again, but we can control to some extent the rate at which that growth occurs, and also maybe the ultimate, which I see here, is the mix of the economic side and the cultural side. And in 5 years or 10 years, you can look back and say, what a good job we did, instead of being overwhelmed with some issue that we didn't anticipate. So that's all I mentioned, and it's really back to the town council and the voters and so forth about what we want to see far out. And that's all I have, just a comment.
I hope you guys heard that comment. Let me know if you didn't, and I can paraphrase.
I think I got the gist of it, Katie, but it might be worth just quickly restating it.
Sure.
Tom just focused on the fact that this is planning. This is really planning at its best, and ensuring that we keep that in mind as we're moving forward, and hopefully that we can anticipate what would be growth issues or development issues as we move into the future, and that is keeping some perspective and balance with the culture of this town and the development of this town, both economically, population-wise, and our culture and how we grew up as a railroad and marina environment, and where we're going from there. So I expanded a little bit, but gave the flavor.
Go ahead.
We've talked about vehicle traffic, east-west, north-south, and pedestrian walkways, but you failed to mention this town is overwhelmed with golf carts. There's no mention of any golf cart walk trails or roadways. Just something to keep in mind.
It's a good point, and primarily right now the golf carts just use the roadways, correct? I think they only, the golf cart only connector that comes to the harbor and comes out right at the shanty is one of sort of the few examples of a golf cart only path I could think of. But it is an interesting thought, is that we do have sort of this third mode of transportation, which is very unique and interesting for Cape Charles. They're certainly a lot less infrastructure heavy than a true roadway. I guess there's nothing to prevent the golf carts from using the vehicular roadways in this, but I like the idea of addressing the golf cart specifically in key locations where it makes sense. It's a good comment.
Then I think we got a comment and question online. I would like to see more of how this looks from the pedestrian's point of view. How does it promote enhanced walkability for residents and tie together the different geographic areas of recreation? And to that end, I would love to be included in those sorts of conversations, as the Impact Center could be a potential terminus area. And then the question from Gabriella, what is the timeline for the residential to be built and offered to the public for purchase, 5, 10 years, etc.?
I'll speak to the first question. At this stage, this is high level. We'll dive in deeper, start applying those street sections to these streets and where these end up, and, identifying some concepts for like the green spaces, and that'll start to show some of the layers of connectivity for, bicyclists, for pedestrians, for golf carts, and vehicles, and how that all starts to overlay. Ultimately, that'll be the final development as developments come forward in the town. If this is adopted, that'll start to show some of that. But it'll be really dependent upon those final layouts of developments. As far as our work with this, we'll try to identify some kind of concepts, some theming, some approaches towards it, some guidance that'll hopefully influence private development as it comes forward. And that's kind of similar to the second question as far as the timeline. This is a planning document. We're thinking, 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 years in the future. What is this area going to grow like? The specific development types and actual building timelines are really dependent upon private development and investment by individual developers and things like that, or the town and how involved they want to get in particular portions of it.
And absolutely correct, this is a planning document. There is currently zoning on this property. It doesn't mean we can't have a development proposal come forward on any component of this property today, whether we have finished the master plan process or not. So we are hopeful that the town will continue to judiciously move through this process and ensure that we get our plan outlined and adopted by the council, and then with the accompanying development of regulations to help implement that plan. But in the interim, I want to just put outside, I heard that question of when would this housing happen, almost like we need it now. We don't disagree with that question and need identified. And the town, on a separate matter, nothing to do with this particular property, but on property the town owns a little bit outside of the harbor area, the town is working on a development proposal for workforce housing. And so definitely participate and stay tuned to the council's meetings over the next few months as that is moving forward to public discussion with a developer over hopefully accepting a proposal to develop town land for that very thing. So.
Anything else? Okay, guys. Wrapping it up, I think.
Yep, that is all we have for steering committee today. Thank you all for your time. We're just about at our 2 hours. The next steps here is, Kevin, can we share the framework plan documents with the steering committee? Yeah, we'll share those with you all, and we'll give the steering committee, say, a week from today to get us any further comments, questions, edits. We'll then incorporate those edits into the framework plan with the goal of being able to present that to the public in April, along with some other exercises for feedback on precedent images and other input. So we'll get those documents sent to the steering committee. We'll give you a deadline to get us feedback, and we will keep on working.
Okay, thank you all very much. Thank everybody online and in person that are here. We have many members of the public here as well. We thank you so much for taking the time to come today. And keep looking on our website. If you're not certain, talk to me or Jack, and we will get you what you need to look at. Okay? Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.